The Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area's Community Services Committee is excited to present the 2020 Pathways to Law Conference. Hi, everyone. This is Patty Tai. I am a patent attorney at Weaver, Austin, Villeneuve & Sampson, which is a patent law firm in Oakland, California, and currently serve on the AABA Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us on our panel today. The Asian American Bar Association of the Greater Bay Area, or AABA, is a professional bar association in the San Francisco Bay Area. AABA is one of the largest Asian American bar associations in the nation and one of the largest minority bar associations in the state of California. Founded in 1976, AABA fosters professional development, community, and service. We are advocates and allies for civil rights, representation, and equality. The Pathways to Law Conference is an event for high school students, college students, and recent graduates interested in pursuing law as a career. The conference usually includes several panels that discuss what different career paths may look like after law school, as well as what law school is like as a law student. Panelists typically discuss career options available with a law degree from the perspective of persons from Asian and Pacific Islander backgrounds. This year, the Pathways to Law Conference is an online live panel series on YouTube. Today's webinar is the private law panel, which focuses on pursuing private practice in the field of law. I'm excited to introduce to you our moderator for today's webinar. Charles Jung is a trial lawyer at Nassiri & Jung LLP in San Francisco, where he defends wage and hour employment cases and also represents executives and founders in the workplace disputes. Charles is a frequent commentator in the legal press on the topics of class actions, arbitration, and employment law. He graduated with distinction from Stanford Law School, where he was an articles editor for the Stanford Law Review. He proudly served as AABA's 2019 president. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Charles.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you to Patty and Danielle Lewis and Pamela Chung for organizing this. And I want to thank Patty in particular. When I was president, she really greatly enhanced our online efforts, and she, lent her skills to a lot of our initiatives like the AABA portal. So I'm very excited to and honored to introduce our panelists today. I'm going to start with Angel Lynn Garrett. Angel is a partner at the Trucker Huss law firm, where she practices in employee benefits or ERISA law, and maybe she'll tell us what ERISA means. She was a Regent Scholar at Berkeley, at Cal, and then she went on to earn her JD with honors at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign College of Law. Very proud of Angel, and she serves as a director at large of AABA. Next, I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Tran Castillo. Liz is a partner at the law firm of Cotchett, Pitre, and McCarthy. She practices in the area of antitrust class actions primarily, and she brings these class actions against international cartels, and she's recovered over 1.5 billion, that's billion with a B, for consumers and businesses. And she's a graduate of BU, Boston University, and also the University of California, Hastings College of Law. Liz is a first-generation American, and she's the very first lawyer in her family. And last but not least, I'd like to introduce Lori Rose Lubiano. Lori is IP and Product Counsel at the Climate Corporation in San Francisco. She, in addition to being an IP attorney, she's a registered patent attorney, and her work focuses on counseling high-tech clients, inventors, startups, public companies, and at the Climate Corporation, which is the world's leading digital agriculture company, she's responsible for developing IP assets. And like our other panelists, somehow, in addition to having a career and also having a family, she somehow finds time to support the community. She serves as She was appointed by Governor Jerry Brown to serve as a member of the Medical Board of California, and also serves as a officer of director of many other organizations, including the Mission Hiring Hall in San Francisco's Mission District. So why don't I start out by asking about PATH, because this is a private practice panel, and I have to imagine that one thing that that students might be curious about is what it means to practice in these different settings. And so maybe I could start with Angel. Angel, can you describe what does it mean to be an employee benefits or ERISA attorney? And if you could paint a picture of what that means tangibly in your day-to-day life.
Definitely. So, as many of you can imagine, I had no idea what ERISA was when I entered into law school. I wasn't even sure what employee benefits was. I mean, it makes sense. It's like employees and you get benefits, right? What it's like is, first of all, I want to say you don't necessarily have to know what you are practicing or what you want to practice when you enter law school. The world of employee benefits for me is, I think, so fascinating and so much fun because I'm working constantly with employers, and companies trying to figure out ways of how we can provide benefits to the workforce. My day-to-day life, and I do have to say I am very fortunate to be working with my firm. I've been with my firm for about 8 years now, is I have great colleagues and I learn from them every day. And so what we do is, it's because we are a full service law firm that only does employee benefits and ERISA, which you guys don't have to remember this, but it stands for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which was a law that the government passed back in the 70s to kind of protect employee benefits. My day consists of usually a few calls in which I, get questions from clients or just schedule teleconferences in which clients want to talk about their plans, the plans that they have put in place for their employees or certain issues they run into, because there's a lot of laws, including the tax code, that comes into play in trying to make sure that everything's in compliance. And sometimes the government will come knocking on the door to do investigations. So, so my day usually has at least 2 calls or so, and they may also include internal calls with my team to discuss strategy. Especially nowadays, since we are all working from home, we have to have these calls versus back in the days we just stop by each other's office and discuss strategy. So my day consists of those calls, and then along with helping companies design or being compliant with their plans, I litigate. So I defend companies who have gotten sued over the benefits that they provide. So the rest of my day is, I'm usually responding to emails or I'm trying to write a motion. So for those of you who have not started law school yet and you're wondering what motions are, just imagine these really, really fun essays that you get to write in which you're telling the other person why you're completely right 100% and the other side is completely wrong. For me, I find that quite satisfying. So I spend a large chunk of my day essentially writing essays of think of long lists of why you're right and responding to emails. I will not, to be quite frank, I know at times I feel like it's difficult to try to manage it all because you have emails coming in at you while you're trying to, write things out, or you're trying to have your thoughts completely articulated on paper. But I find that because of the nature of my practice, how I can go from making arguments on one hand to answering questions with the clients on the other hand, it gives me a variety in my practice, and I really enjoy that.
And Angel highlighted maybe a grouping of the types of work that lawyers might do. One is answering questions, which sometimes we refer to as a counseling-oriented practice. And then she also resolves disputes in a forum like court. And that's where she referred to the litigation side of her practice. Another distinction that she talked about is defending people in cases versus prosecuting cases. And maybe I could ask Liz the same question to describe her work in prosecuting cases and maybe paint a picture of what that means to prosecute antitrust cases in a private law firm.
Sure. Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I practice antitrust law, and on the plaintiff side exclusively, my firm does 100% litigation. So I do 100% litigation. My cases last a long time, between 5 to 7 years. And I spend a lot of time thinking about who to sue. Since I've been at my firm for the last 8 years, we've sued airlines, auto parts manufacturers, electronic component manufacturers. Everyone's price fixing, it seems like. It seems like it's part of the business model. In the last few decades, there's been a lot of price fixing cartels involving companies abroad, but we're seeing more anti-competitive activity among US companies. So I've seen a shift to prosecuting domestic companies. And we actually see a lot of anti-competitive conduct going on right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure a lot of people have seen price gouging as a result of products that we need that we can't get. You see hand sanitizer prices going up. So that all falls within the antitrust umbrella. For the first 7 years at my firm, I was an associate, so I wrote a lot of pleadings, I argued motions in court, basically what you learn in law school about litigating and trial advocacy. I did all of that. Now as a partner, I've been a partner for about 1.5 years, and it's more business development. I think about the type of cases we can bring and how we can bring them, what jurisdictions. But it's been fun, and it's totally different from what Angel does, but on the other side. Yeah, antitrust, I'm sure a lot of people have been seeing it on the news. Amazon, Google, Facebook, everyone is trying to break them apart, and monopolies breaking up falls within the umbrella of antitrust.
And if I could ask Lori the same question, if she could paint a picture of what it means to be product counsel for a corporation and to work in the field of IP, and to kind of distinguish that from the litigation side that Angel and Liz were describing.
Sure. Thanks, Charles. And good morning, thanks everyone for having me here. I feel very honored to be part of this panel. So I think I'd like to start by saying I've always had a passion for science. And so that passion has led me where I am today to be the IP and product counsel for a leading tech company and a disruptor in the world of digital agriculture. And so what we do is we help the world's farmers by giving them software and hardware tools to help them track what's on their fields and the crops that they grow. And so from early on, following a passion of science, I started working for Sun Microsystems, which was a huge tech company at the time, in the patent department. And I knew that was in law school. I knew I wanted to be at a company someday as a lawyer. So I've been practicing for about 12 years now. And at a company, I definitely don't go to court like these two lovely ladies here, because I knew that wasn't something that was for me. But on a day-to-day basis, I work with our company's scientists, engineers, business folks to drive our company goals. And so I think what's satisfying is to know that I'm helping the company put out a product that's helping the world's farmers that feed the world. And what day-to-day looks like for a patent attorney, an IP attorney, in my role is managing a worldwide portfolio of intellectual property, specifically mostly patents, which is a tech company's, arguably our company jewels. It's what gives us value and many options in our business. And so that could mean our culture is somewhat meeting heavy. So I have a lot of meetings with different business folks and scientists to decide to talk about their inventions, and if we have a patent, where can we bring that patent in the world? What makes sense for our business. Sometimes I play detective to try to find out what people are doing, what's going on, and help them give advice to make decisions. And just example of some other things, I work with a lot of engineers. So if, as they're writing code, if they want to bring code into our product, or they want to put code out in the community, I talk to them and help explain to them the different licenses out there for the code. Or I might help with a commercial deal for a needed partnership or contract. So it keeps it interesting because it's all across the board. And that's a little bit of what I do.
Angel, could I ask you, one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning was that that you didn't know when you were in law school what ERISA was or what employee benefits was. Did you know that when you were in law school that, I'm going to work at a law firm that focuses on ERISA and employee benefits, and how did that happen?
Well, I think this is the thing. You never really know, and I know this may sound cliche, but you never really know what life is going to throw at you. You may have in your mind what you're going to do, and I know for some of you who are in law school right now, you may already have perception or an idea oh, I'm going to do the law firm path like everyone does. Or I'm going to, you think exactly what you're going to do. And how I learned about employee benefits and ERISA was that I took a risk after law school. After law school, I worked at a firm which I had an offer at, but it was out in Midwest. As Charles mentioned, I went to law school at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I grew up in Southern California after coming to the States from Taiwan. And so I thought, okay, let me go out to Illinois and let me check it out. Sounds interesting. So I ended up working out in the Midwest. And after working there for a short while, I realized I missed California too much. So I quit my job and I decided to come back and take the California bar. And I called up the employer that I had interviewed with when I was in law school, but they didn't have, they weren't big enough to hire more associates. I came back and basically asked if I could just be a law clerk so I can make my rent while I was taking the bar or studying for the bar. And the law firm partner had expanded, the main partner had expanded the firm a little bit more. And he was like, yeah, sure. This was a law firm that did for the past 40 years now, has only done employee benefits / ERISA for a very, very specific kind of employee benefit plan. When when you listen in the news and you hear about the auto workers or the pipe fitters, like the union kind of plans, that's the only kind of plans they did, which is a kind of ERISA plan. So I went there and I basically started working and I learned what ERISA was. And that's how I even got started. And I didn't even think that I would enjoy it. It was more of I need to, pay the bills while I'm studying for the bar. And I ended up going to meeting with trustees, finding out what the purpose behind all these plans and everything was. And it just went from there. So that's kind of that is how I got started in this whole employee benefits ERISA field. But yes, I had no idea what it was or what ERISA even stood for when I was in law school. I had in my mind completely something else I was going to do. But it just shows you you may not know it, but you may end up in a practice that you never thought that you were going to do and just love it so much and decide to make a career out of it.
And Liz, I'm going to ask you the same question, but maybe we can incorporate one of the questions from the audience, which is, how does a private law path differ in terms of preparation, procedure, and practice? So, Liz, I know that working in plaintiff side antitrust maybe wasn't what you had initially contemplated in law school. Maybe you can describe how you came to that practice, where your cases last 5 to 7 years. You've now you were an associate for 7 years. Now you've been a partner for a year and a half. How did you get to that point? And was there anything that you did in particular to prepare in law school and to get there?
I don't think I prepared more than anyone else in law school. I went to law school in 2008 to 2011. The economy was still recovering from the Great Recession. And I wanted to do litigation, but I didn't know what type of litigation. I must have interviewed with at least 20 places, applied for even more jobs than that, of course. And to be honest, I didn't know anything about antitrust. I knew it had to do with a guy named Sherman and a guy named Clayton, but not much beyond that. And I was very honest at my interview when they asked me if I had taken any antitrust courses, if I had any experience in antitrust, and I said no, but they really appreciated the honesty, and they said, "Don't worry, you'll learn everything on the job," and that ended up being true. While I did learn a lot about researching and writing in law school, I would say 90% of everything all the skills I use in my day-to-day job, I learned on the job. And I'm really glad I took my job, because I have to say I wasn't going to, because my law firm is in the suburbs and I was living in the city. I didn't have a car. It was on the plaintiff side, and I had done defense work during my 2 summers in law school. So it was a big, it was different from what I thought my life was going to be when I graduated from law school. But you know what? I'm so glad I took the job, and I ended up really, really enjoying antitrust law and doing complex cases. And it's really worked out. In terms of what you can do to prepare for a private law practice, I mean, just take your courses in law school. Best prepare yourself as much as you can for the bar, and then don't worry about like having the skills to practice law, because you will step up to the plate and you will do whatever it takes to succeed in your career. And you'll have a lot of help along the way from mentors and people you work with. So I wouldn't worry so much about preparing yourself for a career, because you're gonna have to prepare yourself in any career path that you take. But trust that what you learn in law school and your experiences will best prepare you as much as you can. And I have to say, I don't just practice antitrust law. I practice a whole bunch of areas. I focus on antitrust law, but I also represented a Major League Baseball player in a trial economic loss case, and we got a $2.3 million verdict for him. So don't think that you need to specialize in one type of area. You can do anything. And the law, there's so many different areas. You'll have to get up to speed on different areas depending on what case you have. So just keep an open mind and work hard.
And Lori, you've worked in different environments. You mentioned that you worked at Sun Microsystems. Now you work at a small boutique company that's related to Bayer, right? So, and you have, I have to imagine there are hundreds, thousands of employees that you could potentially service. And you've also worked in a boutique law firm. Can you give us a sense, how did you wind up with your interest in science and then also your interest in training in law to be where you are, and what can a student who would like to emulate your path, what can they do to prepare to get where you are?
So as I mentioned, I've always had a passion for science. And so out of high school, I thought I wanted to be a forensic scientist. And I studied molecular and cell biology in college at UC Berkeley. And I think a common theme in my path has always been trying, with an interest of mine in mind, actually trying and seeking things out. So when I got out of college, I interned at the SFPD, San Francisco Police Department Crime Lab, in their DNA unit, because I thought I wanted to be a forensic scientist. So I tried that out. And I did that for over a year and a half. And I figured I'm not really a lab person. I don't see myself being in a lab all day, the rest of my life. And so I explored law school as a path. And in that process, when I was in law school, as I mentioned, I tried out working at a tech company to see what that was like. And so when I got out of law school, I started off at a law firm for 4 years, getting my skills up and getting trained. But one thing you could do to prepare for that is, in law school, for example, if there's a certain concentration you like, you can take it. So at the school I went to, there was a concentration in intellectual property. So I took more classes in that space. So knowing that I always wanted to be around tech and, science, being on the cutting edge, I put in those first couple of years at a law firm, servicing a lot of startup clients, companies, helping them file their patents and getting exposed to, all that cutting edge technology. But I also tried patent litigation too. So I was behind the scenes. I wasn't the one in court standing up and arguing the case, but I was doing the research and writing the motions like Angel was talking about. And then I was lucky enough to make that jump to go to work for a company about 4 years after being in private practice.
Another viewer asked, what's been the most rewarding part of your career so far, and wanted to throw it open to the group and see if what comes to mind for you. What's been most rewarding?
I could take a quick stab at that. I think what's rewarding or exciting is knowing that I'm behind some products or ideas that can help a lot of people or be useful to a lot of people. So for example, when I was working at a law firm, I wrote the patents for, big companies like Sony PlayStation. And at that time, it was called the Move. So it was this gaming wand, which I thought was really cool. Or I wrote the patents for on the news. You see the traffic cams, like when they show, red or green on the screen for the cars moving. So I wrote a patent on that. So it's kind of neat to work on stuff like that, and kind of that would be like my contribution.
I can take a step at it. I think that what's been most rewarding has changed over the years. But as I've gotten into the practice more and more, I would say the most rewarding part for me is not so much related to my daily, day-to-day, but just the fact that I can meet other Asian American lawyers, especially younger attorneys or high school students, such as many of you who are watching right now, and to serve as a mentor, to share my experiences and to be part of watching them grow and, overcome challenges and just be part of that community of support. That's what's been most rewarding for me. And like every time, I go to an AABA event or I go to another event and I see a student who is now graduating and working and, how they're doing so well in their careers or gone in-house, and to do amazing things like Lori or like Liz winning another case, it makes me really proud. And I find is the most amazing and rewarding part of, being an attorney in San Francisco in the Bay Area.
What's rewarding for me, I think I can express in two folds. One, I practice class action. So when I get a settlement or when I recover from a case, it's usually a very large sum of money, millions, hundreds of millions. One case actually hit over $1 billion. And that gets distributed across classes of thousands of people. And so it feels good to be able to recover these settlements for a lot of people at once. That's really fulfilling for me. On a more personal level, because I'm involved with litigating international cartels, a lot of the meetings and the depositions that I have take place overseas. So I love traveling, and as part of my job, I do a lot of traveling for court appearances and also for depositions. And it's been really nice to do depositions in Hong Kong and go to Japan and do some interviews of executives there, go to Hawaii, visit my family for meetings when they happen there. So it's been really good all around, I would say.
And I'm going to try to combine some of these questions, which I think are useful because they relate to how one's background impacts the career trajectory. So if I could just ask, to what extent and how did your undergraduate major, maybe even where you went to college, and the internships that you pursued help you along your career path, if they did, or how did they influence your career path? And I'll just open it up to the group.
I can take a stab at that. So I went to BU and I majored in economics and political science purely because I was interested in those two subjects, and they're sort of the different sides of the same coin. I didn't know I was going to go to law school. I was interested in law, but I never had like this master plan for my life. And it ended up being really helpful to me having the econ degree, because when I analyze how much to settle with a defendant in one of my cases, a lot of economics of damages go into the thought process. And I have to say that although I don't use it every day, it's nice to have that background on economics in connection with my practice of antitrust law.
Well, and let me ask a slightly different but important question. The purpose of pathways, AABA pathways, and pathways to the law is to kind of give a picture, particularly to a diverse prospective law students, of what it's like being a lawyer, what it takes to get there. One of the questions that we got from Maria V is, what stumbling blocks have you encountered being a woman, being a minority, and how did you overcome it? Anyone want to take a stab at that?
I can take a stab at that. I think that in my career, and especially in my background, as I mentioned, I came as an immigrant. So as an immigrant, my parents didn't speak English that well, and trying to navigate and figure out a lot of things. And also in my career, as Liz mentioned, she's a litigator and I litigate. I'm a litigator too. I think that as you get deeper and deeper into the field of law, you realize that the faces of those who are litigation, especially what we call the old school, definitely do not look like us. And some of the challenges that you will encounter are people who second guess your abilities to successfully litigate the case. They may mistake you as, I think as Asian American women, we tend to look younger than maybe our ages. So people think that maybe you're not the partner on the case, or you are the young associate, or even at times, not gonna lie, you get confused to be the court reporter. For those of you who don't know what court reporter is the person who is literally like typing out what you're saying, like dictation wise, or that you're an assistant. And, while there are times, especially early on in my careers, like those kind of judgments or that kind of treatment may have made me pause a little, or I kind of felt self-conscious and stuff. I think that I've learned to have thicker skin. I've also learned that it's okay. Like, maybe it's better that you underestimate me, because when I'm winning that motion, when I'm arguing and I'm basically telling you every reason that you're wrong, and I win, that makes it even more satisfying. But it is really, really, when that happens to you, it's not easy. It's not easy. You will sit there and you will be in your office at your desk. You're like, well, why? Why is this happening? Or people make comments about, is English your second language, or things like that are maybe not straight out questioning your abilities, but you will feel it. And I would have to say, luckily, I have the support system of my friends or the community here of other, lawyers and mentors at AABA to kind of help me navigate like how to respond to those things and how to turn these experiences into positive experiences. But they will happen, and hopefully less so for those of you going in, as we are trying to make this an even better environment for all of you. But just realize that you can overcome it, and you will become stronger because of it. And you will, if anything, it made me work even harder to show all those people who questioned me like what I could do.
Another question that we got was finances. Law schools, in the best of circumstances, even in the best of circumstances, is an expensive, time-consuming endeavor. Typically 3 years, involving tens of thousands, if not over $100,000. Huge investment of time. We're living in a particular historical moment when it's jobs are uncertain. Who knows when we're going to come out of this recession. Is it still worth it to pursue a law degree? And for students for whom the financial aspects are a factor, what would you say to them?
So law school is a huge investment. I mean, when I went to school, I had some scholarships, but I still took out, I think, over $100,000 in 3 years. And so you have to, even after you get a job, you have to really manage your finances so that you can take care of yourself, take care of your student loans. And so really think long and hard about making the investment and how you think you're going to pay for it over time. But on the other hand, I have to say I highly recommend it. You don't necessarily have to practice law. A lot of my friends went to law school and are now doing totally different things. Some of them are in academia. Some of them just advise companies, but not on the legal side. Some of them do compliance work. There's so many things you can do with your law degree because it teaches you how to think like a lawyer. And so there are lots of different paths you can take. I think it's a good investment, but still, because it's so significant, you should really think about it long and hard before you do it.
And I just wanted to add to that point. I would never let money stop me if something's my passion. And so I've accepted as part of life that I'm going to be paying for law school, but I'm still paying for it, honestly. But I have zero regrets. But to the point about making sure it's right for you, I mean, there are some things, practical things you can do, like what I did before I went to law school. I actually sat in a class, sat in a whole law school class to see what it was about and to see if I could actually do that, or I would like to do that. But also before law school, I worked so after college, but while I was applying to law school, I worked at a patent law firm as like as a clerk, as an intern to see if I would really like it. And actually that's where I discovered that it could really be something for me.
Let me ask a question related to that, that one of our audience members asked, which is, there are members of our audience who are in college now, and they might be contemplating whether to go directly to law school or perhaps take some time off, whether to save up money, make money, or maybe get some experiences like in a law firm or company or something completely different. Any of you have thoughts on a gap year or a gap multiple period of years before law school?
I want to chime in on this because one of the things I do for my firm, along with obviously my job working with clients and stuff, is I'm on my firm's hiring committee. So I interview students to come in for summer internships or, lateral hires, meaning we hire associates in our firm. One thing I have noticed a lot, and which I think may be a good idea, is that for students before going to law school, taking a time for a year or two to go work. I have found that majority of the candidates that I interview who have worked between law school and college have a different level of maturity and poise and understanding how a workplace is versus students who have come straight from to law school from college, which I did myself. So I went straight from undergrad to law school, and I wish now looking back that I actually worked. I think that also doing, a year between, or just some time between going to law school and college also gives you time to breathe and to really think about, as Liz and Lori have touched upon, it is a very expensive and time-consuming endeavor. Really be honest and take that time for yourself to sit back and think about it instead of just propelling ahead, because sometimes we need that time to reflect whether or not this is the right career path or decision for you to make. And what you'll learn from working in an office or whatever you do, I think that's also another level of your growth, to be a semi-adult in a way of understanding how to manage your balances, how to, responsibilities of working with a team, with having a boss to report to, etc. I think that's really, really key. So I would encourage those of you who are contemplating whether or not you want to take time between college and law school, whether to do that too. Yeah, I would say definitely do that. And what you've learned during that time, yeah, maybe it will, you go to law school and you have other classmates who are younger than you and stuff. I think your maturity and what you've learned during your time working will come across in interviews and make you an even better candidate.
I completely agree with that. Like Angel, I went straight to law school from college, and I have to say that all of my classmates who took some time off to work were better prepared. They took law school more seriously, and now when I interview attorneys and paralegals, I like seeing the job experience in between college and law school. It allows me to get to know them more. It shows the skills they've developed working beforehand. And I really like seeing that. I wish I had done the same, take a couple years off. I mean, when I went to law school, I didn't even know what civil procedure was. It would have been nice to work at a law firm for 2 years and sort of learn the in and outs of a law practice. Civil procedure before trial, what does that mean? Serving a complaint, what does that mean? That's all invaluable experience.
And Lori, maybe I could direct a question to you in particular, based on your background and also responsive to a question from the audience, which is that one of the things that one of the paths you pursued is to not just pass the bar, but also to pass the patent bar. For those science majors out there, can you talk about that path and sort of how your background has contributed to your patent practice?
Yes, so to be a patent attorney and to take and sit for the patent bar, there's a list of required degrees, one of which that you must have in order to sit for it. Or there's certain courses that you have had to take, so you don't necessarily need a degree. And actually, you don't have to be an attorney to take the patent bar. You could take the patent bar with some undergraduate degree, and then once you pass, be called a patent agent. And that would allow you to, work for a law firm, for example, and write patents, and, be in the space, but not necessarily be in the position to counsel clients about, their situation. So in that regard, having a degree is actually, is helpful and necessary in order to do that.
And let me combine a couple of questions here from the audience. For each of you, why did you ultimately make that decision to forego other paths and to choose law school and the practice of law as your path? Was there an aha moment for you when you made that decision?
I could start on that. Thanks, Charles. I think probably like a lot of Asian kids, a graduate degree is part of the plan, or pushed by our parents. And when I figured out that a forensic science degree wasn't what I wanted, I started exploring other options, whether it was business school or law school. And once I started talking to attorneys and learning about their careers, I saw some common themes that, they felt satisfied, that they were happy, that it could provide for them and their families. But also I realized just the practicality of the degree. As we talked about earlier, you don't have to necessarily practice law. It can help you if you want to open a business, or when you buy your first house, or you buy your first car. So I always thought, well, this kind of degree can help me no matter what it is that I want to do or am doing in life. And if all else fails, if I'm not working for a company, I could open up my own shingle and make money that way. So I didn't really see many disadvantages behind it.
We've gotten a few questions, and Lori has spoken about how her science background contributed to her IP and her patent practice. But for Angel and Liz, for those students who are in high school or in college and have not yet selected a major and are thinking about law school, is there a particular major that you would suggest?
I'll take a stab at this. So very similar to Liz, my undergraduate, I have 2 degrees. I went to Cal, so I did the undergraduate degree at the Huss Business School, so business degree, and I was legal studies. Okay, so the reason behind this is, as you guys can imagine, Asian parents. I wanted to do something Englishy, history, something fun like that, because I've always loved reading and I liked writing. Not saying I'm the best writer, but I really enjoyed it. But my parents that's pretty practical discussion. That's pretty practical about how much this is costing us, even though, I was fortunate enough to get help going to Cal, and my parents is like, but is this the best use of your time? Hence the business degree. And I'm sure many of you can relate. And so I have both degree, and looking back, I realized it was really good, because having that business background, even though I do not enjoy numbers, okay, I do not enjoy numbers. I hate calculating them. It does help because Liz is on the side of plaintiff, so she's calculating how much she wants from my clients. We're still good friends, don't worry. See, but I'm on the other hand, I'm calculating, well, how much do I really have to give you? So it comes into understanding how businesses work. And now as a partner, I have to understand also how my law firm works. So it's really great. But to answer your question, I don't think there's really any degree that you need to major in. I think the main thing to take away from this is law school is going to require a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of sitting down and thinking outside the box. But I think any kind of degree, or being college in which are teaching you to be analytical, to think, to, get out of your comfort zone, I think it's great. I would suggest at least taking, even if you've already tested out those English requirements, taking a fun history or English class or something like that. That requires a lot of reading and not a non-technical class, I would call it, would be a good way of really trying to even gauge, can I really handle law school? Because you will be doing a lot of reading and a lot of writing. So if you can sit through a class a semester, like even philosophy or something like that, and be okay with that and get some enjoyment out of that, then that would be a good idea.
Well, let me ask a question using that as a point of departure, and also responding to one of the audience members' questions. I remember a time in my first year in law school where I thought, oh man, did I make a mistake here? Is this what I should be doing? And I've been practicing law long enough, and to know that many of my friends had that same experience, whether in law school or in practice. So the question from the audience was there ever a time in either law school or work where you wanted to just kind of throw it in? Did you feel burnt out? Did you want to quit? And if so, how'd you navigate your way out of that?
I get imposter syndrome all the time. Even 9 years out, I feel like every few months I'll be like, oh my God, am I really cut out for this? Should I really be doing this? Everyone is so much more smart than me. And maybe I just picked the wrong career path. I mean, I felt that at multiple times in law school, at multiple times in my practice. That's just, that's just you thinking, overanalyzing as a lawyer. But you just have to reassure yourself that everyone feels this way. Everyone has doubt and has questions their own ability from time to time, and that's fine. I think that's good, that you're essentially checking yourself every once in a while and not being overly confident. I think that's totally fine and normal and routine.
To add to that, there was a time not too long ago, a few years back, where I was really unhappy, and I actually thought about going to medical school. So I started talking to doctors, actually asking them about how it is to be a doctor. But then I came to the conclusion that the reason why I was unhappy was because of my environment, not because, I was, practicing law. And so sometimes I think that's, it could be other things. So what I did was I looked for a new job, and everything was better.
What about you, Angel? Did you ever have a moment like that?
So I'm going to address how I felt. And this is why I say sometimes a gap year between going to college and law school is good. I was overwhelmed my first year. Those of you who know me, and I'm lucky to be serving in a panel with a lot of with my good friends here, is I was completely burned out after first couple of months of my 1L year. It was overwhelming, the amount of work to do. I like reading, but let me tell you, when you're reading the 10th case in a row and everyone around you is like gung-ho and outlining and like stressing you the heck out because they're like, oh, aren't you going to prepare for a final already? Did you outline that case? And you're in that environment with like, my section had, we have 3 sections, I section about like 55 people, and everyone's like, oh, I went to Dartmouth, I went to Northwestern, and all this stuff. And you're like, I'm from a hippie school called Cal. And everyone just so intense, it will burn you out. And how I got through it is I literally, I'm very close to my mom. I call my mom every day. I call my best friend who was working at that time after graduating Cal. And because of time difference, I would call her and just like literally be on the phone, like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And having that support system, or just being honest enough with the people, finding people in my life who told me like, dude, you've gotten through worse stuff before. You can do this. You can do this. And just being able to articulate it and having someone to talk to really helped me get through it. And part of it too was my best friend, like my mom's also very practical. And she was like, you're already there. Even if you get out right now, you already paid tuition. So you might as well just stick it out for a semester and see if it gets better. But if you've gotten this far, you can do it. And having someone to help me through it was helpful. And also realizing, as Lori's touched upon, I'm here and law school will teach me skills. I don't have to be a lawyer. I think that was one comforting thought I had, because I also talked to some people and they were like, you don't really necessarily have to be a lawyer, but it's good to have this on there and adds a little bit more legitimacy to your resume. So they told me that, and I was like, you know what? I don't have to necessarily be a lawyer, but let me just get through this. I've already paid for this semester, and I can always make a decision later on. And that's how I dealt with it and stuck with it. And probably, not the most, best result you want to hear, but it is no doubt that burnout, that 1L year is real. And so don't feel like you're alone when you're doing it, when you're feeling it, or you want to give up. You're not the only one.
And I want to thank the audience for all of these thoughtful questions and the panelists for these insightful answers. In the background, we have AABA's operations director, Ezra Denny, fielding all of these questions. We're not going to be able to get to all of them in our allotted time, unfortunately, but we'll get through a couple more. Ezra will put an email address in the ticker below if you want to email questions, and if the panelists feel so inspired, they'll respond to your questions on the AABA website. one picking up on a theme that we touched on earlier, and remembering Angel's response about what it's like being a person of color and a woman of color in the practice, a practice which is a profession which is probably less diverse than any other. How do you keep your sanity as a lawyer in that circumstance? How do you keep your resilience? And I'll open that question up to everyone.
I think I could try with that. I think we've touched upon support networks, whether that's, one or two of your friends, or maybe you have a mentor, a family member, a cousin, that you can just kind of vent to and talk to. That's always helpful as an outlet. For me, it's also keeping my body healthy, working out, getting some kind of physical activity in. But I think overall it's a balance of work, family, physical health, having fun, no matter how you can do that, especially during these times, but just doing the best to keep a balance.
I think, as a minority, you immediately see how different you are from the majority of a law firm, which is older, white, male, but don't see the difference as something bad. See it as something good. You bring a different perspective. When I tried a case in San Mateo County, most of the jury were women, were minorities. And so when you're trying a case, juries want to see lawyers that look like them, and you should really think about what you bring to the table that someone who is older and, white may not bring to the table. And trust me, there's a lot that you have to leverage. Just be more aware of that. A piece of advice that someone gave me early on in my career is when I had a meeting and there was just a few seats in the room, and I didn't sit at the table. I just sat on a chair to the side. The woman partner at my firm told me, you have to sit at the table. You can't just fit into their perception of you where you're a young associate sitting off to the side. You deserve a seat at the table. Sit there, make your voice heard. And that's resonated with me to today. You've earned your spot and you have to show it.
Maybe I'll ask just a couple more questions in the time we have left. One question is, what was the most surprising thing to you about the actual practice of law? So distinguishing all the prep that you've done in your life to land in that moment where you're embarking on your career. What was the thing that surprised you the most when you actually got to begin your career?
I could take, I'll answer that first. I think the most surprising thing for me was just the amount of customer service. I know when you go to law school and you're like, well, yeah, you're giving advice, you should know it's customer service. But I have to say, when I started working, I didn't realize not only do I have, and you think about a lot, it's like your clients that call you and pay for your services, you're picking up the phone, answering them. Well, first of all, when you're a younger associate, you're not really going to have the direct client contact right away, but your internal clients, like you're working for partners, you're working for more senior associates and stuff like that. And the level of responsibility and the maturity and the poise that you have to show constantly and answer questions readily and stuff, I think that's what shocked me. I thought, like, in my mind, I thought, yeah, I'll sit in front of a computer. I'm going to do some research, like, in legal research and writing, which for law school high school students out there, it's a class in which you learn how to, like, take an issue, a question, and you research it to find the cases to support it, and you write a great essay on it, right? I thought that's what I would be doing. I would do research and whatnot. I didn't realize the extent of, like, how much it would involve, like, me not just doing that, but being able to articulate my answers, communicate that, pick up the phone when a senior associate calls me, be like, well, how did you get this answer, or stuff like that. So just the level of interaction or customer service I had to do, even at a very young level of my career as an associate, that was surprising for me. I thought I would just look at documents and research things in the background, and that was not like that at all. And that's what surprised me about my my practice, and also the amount and the ability to be able to communicate clearly. I knew like about moot court or like debate, you know, those of you in high school, I didn't take any of that. I didn't take debate or anything like that in high school. I had no idea. But I had an idea like of watching TV, like Law and Order. You go out there and you make arguments to the jury, the judge, like what Liz does constantly. And I kind of knew that, but I didn't realize that it also applies to how you interact and talk to people that you work with constantly, or even when you're calling the court to talk to their clerk, like the ability you have to explain yourself clearly, what a big role that plays in your everyday life as a lawyer. So for me, that was what was like, oh, okay. You know, I can't just hide behind my screen or in my office.
Well, we're over an hour, so let me just, for Lori and Liz, let me just broaden out the final question and let you answer your own question. So if there's a question, you can ask the one that I posed, or if there's a final piece of advice that you would like to convey to our audience members that I haven't asked you, please go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Charles. I think I'll go for a piece of advice. And I think one of my mentors actually told me this before law school, and I mentioned passion a lot, but he said, follow your passion, because that's where you'll end up no matter what. You know, your path might be zigzag, but it'll always kind of follow what you're into, what you like. And, you know, going back to like what degree you should take if you want to go to law school, honestly, I think take whatever you find most interested in. You might be into dance or art, fine art, and that could be your undergraduate degree. You could go to law school and maybe you might represent artists. You know, I mean, I think no matter what, it'll be okay. And if you know, can maintain that, follow your passion and have that attitude of positivity, you'll be all right. And people like all of us here will be there, you know, to support you.
I think, you know, if you're in school, keep working hard, keep doing your best so that you land the interviews and the jobs. But once you get a job, don't be afraid to show some of your true color. Be creative, be clever, bring something to the table that someone else does, stand out. And that'll ensure that you are indispensable and you're going to be there for the long haul, because you don't want to just fit into the mold. You want to stand out.
Well, thank you to Angel, to Liz, Lori, for being open and honest. And I hope that the audience got something valuable out of this panel. I'd like to turn it back over to Patty to close.
Thank you, Charles, Angel, Lori, and Liz, for your insight today. We hope you guys enjoyed today's Pathways to Law conference webinar on private law. Please join us next Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for the Public Law and Public Interest panel, which will be moderated by Amit Kurlikar, who is Deputy Attorney General at the California Attorney General's Office in Appeals, Writs, and Trials. The speakers for next week's Public Law panel include the Honorable Magistrate Judge Alex G. Xie of the U.S. District Court, Northern District of California, Julia Ma Powers, Deputy City Attorney at the San Francisco City Attorney's Office, Genevieve Galman Olivia, Deputy District Attorney of Contra Costa County, and Jonathan Meta-Stein, Executive Director at nonprofit organization California Common Cause. If you registered for today's event on AABA's website, you will receive an email with the YouTube link to next week's event. If you didn't register, you can register online at aba-bay.com/pathways. We hope you will join AABA next week for next week's panel, and thank you all for tuning in.